right, so Jason, do you want to just introduce yourself and we can get started here?
Yeah, sure. And I can present too, right?
Yeah.
Let's see.
If not, just let me know and I could promote you to host or whatever I
Yeah,
need to do.
I think I can. Just make sure.
Yeah. All right.
You can see my screen, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Well, thanks everyone for joining. I'm just gonna quickly walk through. I'm Jason. I'm just gonna quickly walk through my background and just kind of maybe just briefly cover and give a high level overview of what we're going to cover today. I'm just really excited for you guys all to be here because I think Web3 and blockchain is just like, and all the things that are happening in NFTs are just really interesting. It's like literally the frontier of, I think, where the new computing paradigm will be in the next era will be over the next decade. Kind of similar to how like smartphones kind of changed like how people use the internet. I personally believe, and I think a lot of people in crypto believe that that's going to happen over the next years, and crypto will be the next computing platform, computing era for the future. So anyway, quickly kind of go over what we'll be covering today. So I'll kind of give an intro to kind of like what Web3 is. Web3 is kind of like new buzzy term that people like to say in crypto and blockchain. It's not crypto anymore, it's Web3. I think the reason why people say that is because again, the comparison, the obvious comparison is to Web 2 and how much Web 2 changed, basically changed the world, right? So with people kind of like to make big comparison for Web 3 as the next evolution for that computing paradigm. But basically, it's interchangeable with blockchain and crypto. I'll give an overview of Polygon as well too. Polygon is a Ethereum sidechain, but we'll go more into that as well. And then kind of like Polygon Studios is kind of the division that I kind of work and advise at. And then Polygon Studios focuses on NFTs. So we'll also kind of cover that as well and kind of like the involvement there. And then lastly, we'll do a quick workshop or like a 30-minute workshop or so. We'll be setting up MetaMask, and I think hopefully by the end, we'll be able to, show you guys how to create like your own NFT. It'll be very simple. There's no coding involved, right? There's a lot of apps and software out there that lets you kind of do that without code. But of course, if you have a friend who's an Ethereum developer or Solidity developer, or know it yourself, then of course you can do much more interesting things. So first, yeah, I'll just kind of jump right in. I'll give a quick introduction to myself. So I'm Jason. I currently an advisor and kind of the gaming lead for Polygon Studios. Essentially, Polygon Studios was created a few months ago, and they kind of wanted me to, as someone who knows a lot about gaming and based in the US, they kind of wanted like a presence out here. So that's kind of what I'm kind of doing for them. So I'm also head of growth at a company called Omelet Arcade. It's actually a Stanford founders were from Stanford actually. Monica Lamb, who's actually a tenured professor at Stanford, is actually one of the founders, but she's not really involved anymore. I know her actually personally quite well. So I actually have been in our office before COVID. Used to actually be right on Ramona University actually. So literally like right in Stanford. So yeah, Stanford roots, went through startups and everything, and you can look it up. It's a pretty interesting company itself. Mobile game live streaming platform. And I was kind of there, basically helped launch the company or the app from zero to where it is now, about 10 million monthly active users, built millions of streamers a month as well too. But through that experience, I learned a lot about gaming and also I think just thinking about how gaming and NFTs could impact gaming as well. So that's kind of like I think kind of the connection there. I also kind of advise and do seed investing to different crypto startups. So Stanford, of course, is the probably the number one startup university in the world. So definitely happy to chat with any folks after or later on after this this workshop. And then previously, prior to all that, that's kind of my current roles right now. But in the past, I used to work at Warner Brothers and corporate development, looking at investing in acquiring different companies in the entertainment and gaming space. WB is a very big gaming arm actually too. So we actually looked at buying like Riot and looked at Twitch. I was actually on the deal team, look at Twitch at the time too. So it was really interesting stuff and pretty cool because it was a film studio also. So if you're a film buff, then it's a pretty interesting and fun place to be. And I started my career in tech investment banking, actually with a focus on emphasizing on M&A and sell-side advisory for a lot of video game startups at the time, which is also why I think it's so interesting to see where we are now at Web3, because when I started my career, basically in 2009, 2010, that was when like the app stores had just come out basically, and there were just all these cool, interesting mobile gaming startups social gaming startups that were coming out. And where we are right now reminds me a lot of back then, back basically when I started my career. And yeah, I went to USC, class 2009 undergrad, as you guys might have overheard me talking about just now. I also want to actually mention something really interesting, kind of funny, is that prior to joining Omelet, I kind of got into crypto myself around 2017. 2018 is when I joined Omelet, and then what's really funny is I actually was talking to another company at the time to be their head of growth as well too. The company had come from Y Combinator, just raised like 1 million, 1.5 million, but they're moving to New York, and I was like, I like the Bay Area. New York's cold, it's far. I grew up here, and I ended up declining that offer. And then that company ended up being OpenSea. So, it feels bad a little bit. OpenSea, if you guys don't know, it's a $3 billion, I think, company. They're literally the largest exchange by far in the NFT marketplace. And I think one of the founders, or if not both, I think are from Stanford too. I can't remember actually. I think maybe one of them is. But anyway, yeah. So good times, but it's all good. It's hard to say. Back then, NFTs were very speculative at the time. It's hard to say exactly where it would pan out, but it was interesting technology, and that's why I thought it was pretty cool to talk to the OpenSea founders at the time. But yeah, so we'll kind of go in. I know for some people this may be very basic, but I think the idea is that this workshop will be will be interesting for people who don't know anything about crypto. So if you already know about what Ethereum is, already hold it or own it, then bear with me. We'll try and go quickly here. So yeah, so we can just quickly start. So what's Ethereum, right? I think this is kind of like a good background and kind of fundamental to at least knowing what it is before you kind of embark on the wide world of NFTs. So I think the best way to understand it's kind of like, and some people call it, it's like the world computer. Basically, it's essentially, I think, maybe the easiest way to understand it is just basically a network of computers that they basically just kind of share, they have a shared database that they all kind of basically have copies of these databases all around the world. And then these computers and this code can also run special code, which is, basically decentralized applications. This is essentially the similar architecture for how Bitcoin works as well too. I'm sure everyone here has heard about that. But at the end of the day, it's just basically keep it very simple. It's a shared, it's a big network in terms of computers all around the world that essentially kind of have that kind of just share the same code. So you can kind of basically see on the screen here, kind of put this here, just kind of just to see kind of how Ethereum is decentralized today. I think I took this picture maybe a couple of weeks ago, but you can see the US has a lot of nodes that are kind of like securing the network, Germany, China, Singapore, etc. So it's basically, pretty decentralized for the most part, and you can look this up yourself. And what's kind of cool about Ethereum, it's a little bit different than maybe Bitcoin or other blockchain networks, is that they basically allow the creation of what's called a smart contracts, and then also decentralized applications. So basically with Bitcoin, I think maybe the best way to understand it, and I think they're probably working on this, maybe in implementing smart contracts in the future. But really, at the end of the day, Bitcoin is kind of like almost like a calculator. It's just kind of like input output, very secure. The OG in terms of blockchain technology, and has by far the most security, I would say, probably of all the blockchains out there. But at the end of the day, it's a little bit limited in terms of what you can do. It's just really great for basically counting and being a ledger for counting transactions and things like that. Best blockchain in the world for that. But at the end of the day, Ethereum is actually a lot more flexible. You can do a lot more things, and more importantly, you can have a huge developer network to build on top of Ethereum. And then very quickly, Ether is basically what powers the network. You need to own Ether in order to do things and interact with the Ethereum blockchain. I think people may ask, well, why would you do that, right? Because if you don't have that though, you have Ether. If you don't have Ether, if there's no cost to executing a transaction, then what that could happen is that will easily run into an infinite loop where someone either on accident or a malicious actor could easily just shut down the whole network by just having like a code that just runs infinitely. Because again, this is a shared network. It moves slower than a normal database that all of Web 2 is built on, like like LinkedIn or Facebook. It's just a central database. But these are databases that are Ethereum is basically a network of computers. They all have to communicate with each other and share the same code. So running some sort of like infinite loop or infinite contract or infinite command would basically just shut down the whole network. So you need Ether for this reason, so that you can make sure that there's a price to to the execution of the contracts or or to use the network, to use a world computer. And I think just taking a step back, right? Like, why is this like interesting, or why is this is cool, and why do people like care about this so much? Because basically, you know, I think it's really just about this decentralization aspect, right? It's that any user can essentially make transactions or execute commands, you know, without a central intermediary. You know, basically, if you have an internet connection anywhere around the world, you know, you could potentially, you know, just make a wallet online. You could potentially even, you know, act as an Ethereum node as well too, to have your own copy of the whole Ethereum blockchain. You could do that too. And essentially you can interact with it, you know, send, receive ETH, interact with different applications, or even just create your own dApps that are interoperable with other smart contracts too, which is like the super cool composability aspect of Ethereum. I think what's really interesting about this too is that, you know, I think with you guys are probably here in the tech press and stuff, right? Just with you know, the ability for you know, different companies like social networks, right, to basically shut down different accounts and things like that, because it's all centralized. So of course, you know, one application that people are working on, that various groups are working on, are like, you know, decentralized social networks, where it's not so easy, or it's a lot harder to, you know, just be totally you know, to be totally removed from like a social network, for example. So it's one kind of a example of that. Another example is like, if you're making a bank account, right? You don't have a great credit score. Oh, you can't make a bank account. So how do you receive money, and how do you kind of get on your feet and actually, you know, make a business, right? That's very difficult. That's a very real problem, especially for people in third world countries. This, you know, because all you need is an internet connection. This is kind of a gateway and portal for, you know, other people that may come from like limited conditions or worse conditions to be able to interact and transact, and basically potentially even like run businesses, you know, a worldwide business, and be able to transact. So that's kind of like why decentralization is interesting. So moving very quickly, so what's an NFT, right? So so NFT essentially, so what we're talking about just now with like transactions like Bitcoin, for example, or even just Ether, those are basically fungible. Fungible means that if I own one, you own one, we trade it, it's the same thing. They're not really any different from each other. So non-fungible basically means that they cannot be swapped like for like. So if I have an NFT and you an NFT, the idea is that they're different and they're unique in some way, right? Almost like a collectible in some ways. That's a good way to think about it too. And basically, the NFT is essentially a version of an Ethereum smart contract, either ERC 721 smart contract that kind of defines defines what an NFT is. And essentially it represents a proof of ownership of, you know, unique items. Also immutable and fairly transparent. Again, like with Ethereum and also with all the public blockchains, you know, it's transparent in terms of like who owns it, in terms of the address, who owns it. You can all see that all online through blockchain scanners and like, you know, these websites that support this sort of analytics. Because at the end of the day, again, Ethereum is a public blockchain. So Zedrun is an interesting example, and we'll go into more examples later, but just very quickly, Zedrun is basically like a digital horse racing game. Each horse is an NFT. They have their own different traits, like a bloodline, gender, ways they breed with others, that makes each horse basically have a unique DNA. So it's kind of an example of a game / NFT project that's kind of pretty cool, and actually one of the more popular ones today. And basically users can basically sell and trade their horse NFTs, right? And of course, they're interoperable because the public blockchain, they're interoperable with other NFT marketplaces. People can basically, if you know Solidity and you have a team together, you could actually create your own OpenSea competitor. And the idea is that because it's on a public blockchain, you could actually even support that as well too. And it's not like OpenSea has like a monopoly on it. You know, anyone can necessarily can read the contract, and then if someone is willing, if I hold like a Zedrun horse and I want to trade on this other place, I can do that. It's not like it's locked into any sort of platform, or it can be designed to be that way at least. And yeah, so I think what's kind of interesting too is that with regards to gaming, right? So so that's kind of like my specialty. You know, Zedrun is an example of gaming itself, but essentially, you know, kind of, you know, it's Zedrun itself is kind of like a game where you can basically race the horses, right? So we think that's pretty cool. It's actually pretty popular on Twitch sometimes when they have these larger races with big prize pools. yeah, it's just a pretty interesting application of NFTs, and pretty creative actually when it first came out. No one had really done that when they first launched Zedrun. I'll kind of move on in terms of kind of the history of NFT collections. I kind of noted some of the more notable ones, just to give you a sense of kind of the history of NFTs in general. But essentially, CryptoPunks is a really interesting one. That they're kind of the original NFT. I don't know if they're exactly the first one, but I think they are definitely among the very first ones, like maybe within the same month or couple month time frame. And essentially, you might have heard about these things are trading for literally millions of dollars. Like they're on Christie's and auction houses. And I think, people value them. You may why essentially they're just basically images, right, of one of these characters. It's highly pixelated, and people laugh. It's kind of a meme a little bit, but it is interesting because people collect them and they value them because it is the first notable crypto NFT project, right? So it's kind of like, I don't know, I guess maybe you think of it like, oh, it's like owning a piece of the internet almost, or the future internet. So I guess that's why people value it. At the end of the day, if that's what people value and pay for, then that's what it's worth, I guess, at the end of the day. Ethereum Rocks is another one. It's kind of funny because it's almost like these are all kind of very memey, right? But this is also a very early project that people purchase. This is interesting because they actually they have their own website too, where you can buy it and mint it, or you could mint it at the time, but you can buy it. They have their own little marketplace on the Ethereum Rocks website. You can look at them right now if you wanted to. You can see that, yeah, that's very expensive. 10,000 ETH is like quite a lot of money for digital rock, essentially. And then moving on to the more contemporary projects. I guess CryptoKitties is not super contemporary. It was like 2017 when it came out. But this is kind of interesting. It's very notable because it was kind of like the first time people made an NFT, and there was a gaming component behind it. And also, CryptoKitties was also notable in that they basically essentially shut down the Ethereum network because it was just so popular. So many people were buying them, trading them. It was just basically mania at the time, and the Ethereum network got really slow because there's just so much competition in terms of gas fees. In order to be able to transact on the system at that time, it just was overloading the network essentially. But yeah, that was a really interesting use case, and this is actually my own CryptoKitty. This is my own CryptoKitty that I own, that I bought in 2017, which is I think now supposedly worth like $500, but I bought it for like $3. I don't know if it could actually sell it for that much, but hey, always taking offers. And then here on Bored Ape Yacht Club, this is definitely one of the more newer NFT projects that have come out. This came out around like March or April of this year. Basically, what's kind of interesting about this is that it's kind of like a new form of relatively newer form of NFTs. It's what's called like generative art NFTs. Generative meaning that all these different traits, and I can show you more a little bit later when we dive deeper into it. But all of these different traits are like the skin, like the expressions and stuff. There's basically 140 of them, and then they basically randomly generate. It's almost like a loot box, or like almost like or like going to like pulling or going to the arcade, and you like kind of put a token and you get something random coming out of it. That's kind of essentially the same thing where you can kind of, when people were minting them, they got this like kind of randomly generated out of like 140, 150 traits of this basically this ape picture. But what's interesting about it is that they had the creators had this concept that, hey, maybe we can use NFTs as almost like an entry point to like a club, an exclusive club. So you had to have a Bored Ape to go to their website, and then on the website you could talk to other people, you could kind of interact, you could go on this wall and just basically draw and spray paint. It was very basic and rudimentary, but it caught fire. A lot of people really liked it, and now it's notable because this is actually literally Steph Curry's one that he bought himself, and he puts it on his Twitter profile. And a lot of other celebrities like really bought in and got into it because they like the art, and they also like the community and membership that having one of these Bored Apes meant. So that's kind of like the trend that we're seeing now, is that a lot of these NFT projects are almost like it's almost like kind of like being like a new Soho house, like digital Soho house. People of course using it for gaming and other utilities, but a lot of these ones now, at least the notable projects, are basically like membership clubs essentially, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, so just kind of going into kind of the popular NFT marketplaces now. And I kind of picked these different ones for different reasons because they're all a little bit different in their own way. So I'll just quickly go through them here now. So OpenSea, as I mentioned, is the company that I had talked to back then. Great founders, great products, and they actually are the largest and by far most liquid NFT marketplace. I think it's literally like 95% of all NFT transactions go through them right now. They also actually natively support Ethereum and Polygon in terms of purchasing and also minting, which is great because as part of Polygon, makes things a little bit faster and easier for people when they want to like make an NFT. But what is interesting, actually, the latest news though is that you may have heard of it yourself too, is that Coinbase also just announced they're going to be making a NFT marketplace and having that available. It looks like, I think last time I saw, about 1.5 million people already signed up to be on the waiting list for that. So that's going to be pretty interesting because Coinbase is obviously a big portal entry point into for people buying crypto for the first time. My mom was actually asking me about NFTs the other day because she got an email from Coinbase talking about it. So yeah, so I think it'll be pretty interesting, and I think it's definitely like NFT is still very early right now. It may seem like with the high prices that it seems late, but it's still very, very early, I think, in the curve here. But yeah, so there's gonna be a lot more competition with OpenSea, but OpenSea is by far the biggest one right now. Rarible is kind of an interesting one too, because they're so what's interesting is that their marketplace is actually compatible with OpenSea. So I think they share the same listings, I believe. But what's kind of unique about Rarible is that they have a decentralized governance structure. So they have like their own rare token, and basically people can basically vote on things that the developers like will work on. So it's kind of think of it like it's like OpenSea, but it's decentralized governance essentially. So that concept is interesting, right? Because OpenSea is very founder led. It's typical equity structure, but Rarible is kind of like one of those like new sort of crypto native ones, more crypto native ones where it's all about decentralization, even at the development and engineering layer for the actual marketplace. Artblocks is a very interesting project. Basically, they have these squiggly lines. They've been selling a lot too. There's actually one of the most hyped NFT projects, but they're also but I would think of them more like a combination of like studio plus marketplace. They're highly curated, and their whole thing is that they basically make what's called verifiably deterministic digital art. You guys can look into it a little bit more. I won't go too much into it, but basically what that means is that they design their smart contracts in a unique way, where essentially if you have some sort of string of random letters and numbers, that will always generate, if you have the right basically seed code, it will always generate, and you run it through a smart contract, it will always generate the same amount, the same exact, essentially, I guess, like squiggly line, for example, and with the right colors and stuff. So that's how it's deterministic in that way. And it's interesting because it was actually kind of like the first time anyone had done that on Ethereum or any blockchain. So it got a lot of hype, and it's actually pretty cool, I think, from a technical standpoint. One of the more consumer-friendly ones is called NBA Top Shot. So you guys may have heard of this, especially the NBA fans in the audience, but they're basically they're not built on DApp, they're not built on Ethereum, they're built on the Flow ecosystem, which is actually created by Dapper Labs, which is the original creator of CryptoKitties. And basically it's a closed ecosystem for collecting and trading NBA licensed NFTs. And their whole thing is that it's like, highlights and moments that you want to collect. And they have some every season. And yeah, it's really popular. It really helped penetrate the mainstream, I think, for NFTs. A lot of people I've noticed that trade and play or collect on NBA Top Shot are not at all don't even necessarily even own Ethereum at all, but they just like the NBA. And it's been a great gateway, I think, for people to understand what NFTs are, with a great user interface. And then Nifty Gateway is another one of those kind of like more curated platforms. They're very focused on like music and art. So you can kind of see how some of these, and there's a lot of these marketplaces that kind of have their own niche focus, and Nifty's focus on music and art essentially. And then Bitsky is a little interesting in that they're trying to be like the Shopify of NFTs, and that it's not like they have their own marketplace, but they let, if you're a creator and you want to make your own marketplace on your own website, then they can help power that basically, right? Similar to how Shopify powers the e-commerce storefront if you're just an independent boutique or something like that. So and then basically their business model is usually the business model is taking a transaction fee, but creators basically pay a monthly service fee to host their own storefronts using the Bitsky technology. But yeah, I do want to mention too what's kind of interesting about smart contracts and about these things too is that you can actually, what's kind of cool and very creator friendly, and I think why a lot of artists are really flocking to NFTs as a way to monetize their audience is that and their art is because not just because of the hype, it's really hyped right now. There's a lot of demand for quality art projects or quality NFTs, but also there's this concept where you can kind of basically in the smart contract for an NFT, you can also code it. It's code basically, right? So you can what's common now is that people can actually code in a transaction fee. So that essentially what that means is that anytime it's traded or sold, a portion of that of the maybe 5% is kind of like the standard I think right now, but 5% of that will go to the original creator's Ethereum wallet. So that's kind of a very interesting concept, right? Like you can't really do that on eBay. Like how would you even do that without like a public blockchain? It seems a little bit difficult to do, but it's very easy and natural to do that using Web3 technologies. So it's kind of an example of how Web3 can really push the innovation on not just like what is being made from a technology standpoint, but also the business models associated with it too. So I'll kind of stop there before I move on.
There's a question in the chat, Jason.
Sure. Okay. So why does verifiably deterministic? Why does it matter in the case of art blocks? I think it's like kind of two things. I think the first thing is that it's just like kind of cool. People just thought it was like really cool that someone did this. And in crypto, it's just so new that anytime you do something different, like, oh, I made the first NFT, it ends up being really valuable. But I think what's kind of cool about the fact that so the other aspect of that too is that it's very different than kind of like how the other ones work right now, which is basically it's just kind of like this is random. So if you look at the actual smart contract of like what's being like if you like what we're going to do later today on OpenSea, or what most of these NFT projects like Bored Ape, for example, usually what you see if you actually look into the smart contract is that it's essentially a link to it's essentially there's a little bit of metadata, and then there's like the link to an external like website, which is a centralized website, right? It's like hosted on the website. The art is hosted there, and of course, like people could always like host it later on another website. But at the end of the day, it's like a link. It's literally like a link in there. So that's not like it's not super decentralized. I have to be totally honest with you. Of course, it's like the image is being hosted on a centralized server. So if that server goes down, then you could argue that, well, maybe does the value get lost then at that point, right? Because you can't see the picture anymore. But what's cool about art blocks is that in the actual smart contract in the actual smart contract for their NFT, it is actually like it's like a generator, right? And basically what you get when you mint it is that you have the seed code, and then when you put it in the smart contract, it will basically do the calculation and say, okay, this is like what you actually get. So I think people value it more because it's basically more decentralized, because it's actually what the art is actually being generated and verifiably deterministic is actually on the smart contract itself. It's not on an external like website that calculates that, right? So I think that's why I think people think it's like kind of cool. It's a good question though, really good question. I would definitely recommend looking more into that, because it's just kind of like from a technical standpoint, I think Art Block is actually one of the coolest NFT projects from like how they did it like technically, right? Hopefully that answers your question. Really good question. Okay, does anyone else have any other questions? I can kind of wait for like a few seconds or so if people do. Feel free to ask them anytime. I'm happy to be interrupted. I know it's digital, so it's not like the most like intuitive way to kind of raise your hand or anything, but yeah, just let me know. I'm happy to stop at any time. Chat. Okay, if there's nothing else, then I'll just kind of move on. I'll talk a little bit about Polygon. I'll move through this pretty quickly. So basically, Polygon was founded in 2017. If you guys were paying attention or remember, 2017 was when CryptoKitties basically shut down the whole Ethereum network. So literally, that was that was literally the origin story of why they started working on Polygon. The founders started working on Polygon, but basically Polygon is essentially they call it layer 2, but really the I think more correct classification of what Polygon is a side chain that's connected very closely to Ethereum. Basically, the whole idea is that by using Polygon and using the side chain, you basically scale up the Ethereum network and make it run a lot faster on this other chain that like knows all the things that are going on inside Ethereum, but basically is essentially another chain that is designed to be a little bit quite a bit faster and cheaper to execute and run transactions on. The reason why they're able to do this is because they did make Polygon did make certain trade-offs in terms of making it a little bit more centralized. Kind of increasing. Don't want to go too much into it, but increasing the block size, for example, making it so that every block that's created on the Polygon chain, it happens faster. It doesn't require as many validations. So basically, less of the computing networks need to agree to say it's correct, which also means that it's less secure, a little bit less secure. But of course, the trade-off is that the pro is that it's much faster and much cheaper. So again, I think when you think about like crypto and different blockchains, just in the future, not just for this discussion, but when you think about it, it's always about like I view it as a scale, right? It's like on one end you have like Bitcoin and Ethereum, where it's extremely secure. There's a lot of people validating, a lot of people checking the code in the database to make sure it's correct, and it's very decentralized. But it's also slower too. And on the other end, you have the very far end, which is like a centralized database, like just one server in the cloud or something, and then just one company just running that. That's like the fastest you can get. But then there's a gradient in the middle where you make some certain trade-offs with security, decentralization, and certain Web3 utilities, and then for I'm trading that off for like for usability and speed and all that sort of stuff, right? So it's kind of like a gradient, and that's how I think about it when people say, oh, like this chain is like the best chain. There's always a trade-off, and you just have to think about like where in the gradient are they in terms of that trade-off, right? So that's how I think about it at a very high level. But basically, so Polygon, is faster, designed to work very closely with Ethereum. Essentially, what that means is that if you have an Ethereum address, you also have a Polygon address. They're the exact same thing. So that makes it very easy in terms of like making moving transactions back and forth. You don't have to do some weird, like really complicated bridging process to get your assets somewhere else and to transact with them. So at this point, it's a pretty big chain. I think Polygon is the largest Ethereum sidechain or even layer 2 in the world right now. Definitely by far the most proven in terms of like scalability and just having it actually work. There's a lot of interesting projects that are trying to tackle this problem right now in terms of making Ethereum more scalable. Ethereum is also itself trying to, they have Ethereum 2.0 that will be coming out. I think either later this year or early next year is what they're projecting. That will make it a lot faster too. But again, we just have to see how things play out. And at least right now, Polygon is the is doing a lot of transactions daily. And I think actually just maybe a week ago, it actually surpassed the number of daily active users of the chain. Actually surpassed Ethereum like a week ago. So that was a pretty big milestone, I think, for the chain itself. But it's still at the end of the day, still an emerging blockchain, but one of the more established ones currently, especially for connected to the Ethereum ecosystem. So I guess it's kind of like pretty much the same thing I would talk to you about. Extremely low transaction fees. To give you a sense of, if you've never used Ethereum before, the transaction fees basically are determined by just how popular and how many people are using the network. So with the NFT boom, there's a big DeFi boom too earlier as well too, decentralized finance boom. There's just a lot of demand to use the Ethereum network, which is great for Ethereum and great for the price of Ether, but not so good in terms of using it, right? So so to give you a sense of the average transaction fee, so on Polygon, that's about, literally that's 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros. So extremely cheap, right? But Ethereum, to do like just one simple transaction, such as like me sending like 1 Ether to my friend or to myself, that would cost probably about right now maybe about $30 or so to just make that transaction. More complicated transactions such as minting an NFT or transferring NFT, that's because that's a more complicated smart contract. It requires more code to run and more resources to run for the world computer. That can take up to like $80 or so right now. So it's pretty expensive right now. To give you a sense of like how expensive it is, it's pretty pricey right now to do that. But then again, it's still, people don't mind. They're still willing to do that. People are still using it every day at huge volumes. So it's kind of interesting, right? I think that's kind of what makes the promise of blockchain and crypto very interesting too, that people are still willing to do that, even though the fees are so high. Yes, David, I see your comment there that it's gone up on Polygon. It has definitely gone up on Polygon as it's become more popular. So again, Polygon also, at the end of the day, even though it is like 8 to 9 times faster, roughly speaking, it for sure will eventually run into the same issues as Ethereum too, right? Because as more and more people use Polygon, it will also start to congest and load the network. But it will take a lot more time to get there. But yeah, that's absolutely true. Good to point that out, David. It is actually has gone up over time as well as more people start to use it. So I should probably just update this in the future. But thanks for letting me know about that. But yeah, it is a good point to know though that again, yeah, that at the end of the day, these technologies, there's as you kind of go down the gradient of how fast you can make certain things go, there's always going to be kind of that limit. So I think that's kind of like a thing I think for crypto as a ecosystem or as a whole industry, kind of think about how to like make that really be able to scale up quite significantly, because we're still such in early days, right? And Polygon will eventually, as it grows, will probably reach some sort of limit as well too. So there's definitely teams like thinking about this right now, and that just kind of goes to show just how like early we are in this space. But yeah, so you can kind of look at this. I mean, there's a lot of transactions. It's pretty proven out right now, and there are other teams, other Ethereum-based scaling solutions, and they're all kind of doing interesting things. And we'll kind of, I guess, we'll see, how things pan out over the next decade. I just kind of wanted to mention kind of the different partners that Polygon has. OpenSea is an important partner, of course. It's, Polygon is integrated with OpenSea directly. So you can mint and also mint NFTs on OpenSea, buy OpenSea NFTs that are Polygon related using only your Polygon wallet. But of course, we also work with many other companies as well too. Atari is like a big gaming company you may have heard of. I think they're doing some NFT projects right now with us. Decentraland, Decentral Games, these are all Zedrun I mentioned earlier. You may not have heard too much of that. At the end of the day, I think, and I guess this is maybe I can speak to this given my I guess my standing at Polygon is that we are talking currently right now, like the latest is basically we're talking to all these different AAA game studios like the Activisions, EAs, Riots of the world, right? And I think they're still very early. I would say they're still kind of thinking about it. They're like, oh, NFTs are interesting. I think some like half of them are like, oh, well, are we just kind of getting in on the on the top of the bubble basically. So some of them are a little scared about that. Others are really trying to be very conscious about not trying to convey that they're being very scammy or they're just trying to make some money, a quick buck from their fans. So it's kind of like that branding aspect too that people are worried about. But it is my belief that I think that over the next 3 to 5 years, that eventually every single gaming company will be integrating some sort of NFT component into their games. Just as a gamer myself, I think it makes a lot of sense to have property rights to whatever things that you buy. And I think people will demand that, I think, as they understand that this is something possible. And they realize when they play other games that allow you to do that, I think they will really value that. Good. Okay, so I see there's a few questions here from Kyle. Is spam a problem on Polygon if it's so cheap to deploy things? That's a really good question. Let me just take a sip here. I would say that on Polygon, for whatever reason, I haven't seen it as bad as other chains. So Binance Chain is another Ethereum-based blockchain that was basically founded by Binance, which is a very large crypto exchange, not really in the US, but more so outside. And there definitely was a lot of spam and problems there too. And then Solana, which is kind of like the new thing that came out that's sponsored by a big crypto exchange called FTX. There's a lot of projects out there. I mean, they've kind of recently, there's a few projects that have gotten a lot of scrutiny because basically they essentially just copied exactly what was going on in some of the different projects on Ethereum and literally just ripped off everything, right? And people were kind of complaining about that. But at the end of the day, can't really stop them from people from doing that. So there's a little bit of that kind of like bad branding aspect, with these different chains. I would say Polygon's not so bad, but of course, I think because it is easier to mint things and it's so cheap, definitely it definitely is more spammy, I would say, than like Ethereum, for example, right? I think all of the different chains with low fees experience this issue, but I feel like I see it, and this is not just me talking because I'm from Polygon. Even like before, that's what I noticed, that Binance Chain and Solana had a little bit more of these like kind of like these projects that were a little bit seemed a little like scammy or just kind of like just a quick money grabs. Yeah, but yeah, definitely I think the interesting thing too from a growth perspective, right, is that is that because these wallets are publicly available, some of the growth tactics that people are experimenting with right now is basically they're treating like the addresses as like email addresses, right? So yeah, so kind of what David is saying in the chat here, that people are able to basically airdrop NFTs as ways to say like, oh yeah, like, hey, this is my project, you get this free thing, like check me out, So that's something people are experimenting with, but I don't know how effective that really is without proper context. Let's see here. I'm just going through. Is Sandbox using Polygon at all? That's a good question. Actually, I know it's funny. I actually was supposed to talk to the Sandbox co-founder like yesterday, but I moved the call. And I will have a much better answer for that. I'm actually not totally sure. Sandbox is someone I know that the Polygon team is talking to them, and I was supposed to talk to him myself too. But I'm going to talk to him next week actually. So I'm actually not totally sure if they are or not. But you can check. I think it's pretty easy to find out. But I don't know off the top of my head, although I probably should because they're a pretty notable gaming project. And then Laura, I see there's a question here. What are the security consequences of trading off security versus speed using Polygon? How might we actually make the decision about which chain to use? Or is there no serious security loss? It's more about thinking about the popularity of the chain or audience. Yeah, so that's there's a lot of things to consider in that question. And I think that's kind of what, so I'll say this, I'll kind of share what I see when I talk to different startups and how they're thinking about it. And also with, the companies that I advise too, that are also thinking about what chain to use and what chain to pick. I think, for example, I have a good friend actually that built a pretty successful mint on Solana. And what was good about that is that Solana was able to provide a lot of support. So right now, what's happening right now in the ecosystem is that basically, so Polygon also has like 100 million fund, but like Solana, Terra, all these different like layer ones that are everyone is like looking at this like, oh, this is a land grab. Like we have to get as many people using our chains as possible, like right now, right? So everyone's just throwing like money at basically every startup that will like want to do something in this space. Essentially, it really kind of feels like that sometimes. And they're also, of course, providing support and marketing and technical help as well too. So I think like that's definitely like I think one of the major considerations in terms of if you're a startup thinking about, okay, what chain do I want to go and use on? I think for sure, absolutely. What chain is going to give you maybe the most money? They'll help you kind of fund your great idea or the idea that you're excited about working on, and also what kind of marketing can they provide? So my friend, built on Solana, he was very happy actually about the support he got from the team. But I think because Solana is a very early new layer one, basically Solana is like a Ethereum competitor, direct competitor. They've been having a lot of issues with like the technical aspects of the smart contracts and just basically the security, I guess, of the chain itself too. So it's not about Polygon necessarily, but like Solana, for example, 2 or 3 weeks ago had a pretty major outage, right? And it was a really big news actually in the crypto industry because it was literally down for like 12 hours, right? So imagine like Ethereum being down. I mean, Ethereum or Bitcoin being down for 12 hours, like that's just inconceivable to think about, but kind of just shows like how early we are in the space and how it can be tricky to get these new technologies to work. But in terms of Polygon itself, I think there's a lot of questions to go into it. I think personally that being tied to Ethereum is the right way to go. If I were a startup, that's what I would advise. That's what I advise to my friends to think about it, because I think at the end of the day, if you're building for longevity, then I think Ethereum is the one that you can feel pretty good about. Whether Ethereum 2.0 becomes this great thing, all of a sudden everything becomes like really fast and easy to transact on. Even if you built on Polygon, you could still transfer over to Ethereum because there's that connection is really good, right? And that's actually why I decided to advise for Polygon, because this is personally what I believe. And I mean, I could have actually advised for other ones too. I was talking to a couple others, but I thought Polygon seemed like the one that made the most sense to me. So it's kind of like my personal decision, but I think it's hard to say exactly, right? And from the security standpoint, I don't think there's anything to worry too much about it for the most part, at least for Polygon, because Polygon is big enough now, and there might be enough decentralization where it's not an issue. But I think for the smaller chains, yeah, it's definitely like something to worry about. But again, at the end of the day, I have friends that are very much more on the Bitcoin Ethereum scale, and they think that Polygon, to be totally transparent and fair, they think that Polygon is not secure enough for them to feel comfortable, right? But for me, I think it's comfortable. I think for most normal users, it's probably okay. Let's see here. There's a lot of messages here. Yeah, so I think, so I'll just comment on the last comment from David. Cross-chain is the future. I do also personally think that multi-chain, having multiple chains is probably the way it's going to go. There's a very big game called Axie Infinity. That's kind of, you might have heard of it. They just raised like $150 million from A16Z and a bunch of other folks. And they basically started on Ethereum. I think they even experimented with some layer 2s at the time, but layer 2 technology was not very good at the time. This is like 2018, 2019. And then they ended up just choosing to build their own chain. And what's really funny is that, you know, I was kind of thinking about this with one of my friends who's working on his own startup in gaming too. And then, you know, you would think like, oh, it's kind of crazy that, you know, that they built their own chain. But then I think as you start to see kind of like issues and stuff, I think eventually as these companies get bigger or you have a lot more people using it, again, there's always going to be that limit even for the public blockchains, where eventually it may make sense to have your own private chain. So what we are seeing now in the current stage, and this is like, you know, literally like most current thing, is that we have some of these bigger gaming companies are building up their own chains. They're also going out to the market and saying, hey, like build on our chain. So I don't know. I mean, eventually, I don't know exactly how it's going to work out, but I do think there's going to be multiple chains. And I think hopefully eventually like those chains will all be interoperable with each other in some way or form, that where literally you could, you know, go through a bridge, you can transact between all of them in some form or another. Maybe it's not very clean, or maybe not very, the UX is not very good, but it will be possible, hopefully, maybe in the next 5 to 10 years. Yeah. Yeah, so my favorite Polygon application, I actually like the DeFi stuff a lot on Polygon. So I just like trading on Polygon a lot just because it's so, but of course the gaming stuff is like really great too. I think Zedrun is actually the one that's most well known and the one that people really like a lot, because it's actually like the game is actually pretty fun. So I would say for the gaming side, Zedrun, and that's why we promote it, because it's we feel it's probably one of the best projects out there. But from my own personal usage, I actually like to use the decentralized finance stuff on Polygon because it's nice to be able to, you know, daily compound your stuff that you're like earning, for example. Yeah. Anyway, great to see such an active chat. I can maybe pause here, and then I guess I may just quickly run through here, and then we can maybe pause before we do our workshop. So just really quickly about Polygon Studios, just so you guys kind of know, this is kind of like what I'm like, I guess the division that I work at Polygon. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we're focused on gaming and brands entertainment. Polygon itself has a $100 million fund writing seed checks to basically any sort of startup or interesting company or team that will be basically, you know, building on the Polygon network. So of course, being Stanford, I know there's probably a bunch of you out there who are probably thinking about their own startups as well right now. So, you know, happy to chat about that. Of course, you know, it just kind of depends on the team and how we feel about the opportunity. But you know, I think right now is actually a very good time. It's very founder friendly right now. So I think it's a very good time to kind of get in and check out like what NFTs and blockchain's all about from a startup perspective. I guess this is just a slide that we have here. It's not really like, doesn't say too much. Basically, Polygon has a lot of different connections. Sometimes we will help make intros to other VCs in the space too for, you know, more promising projects, and then, you know, we have advisors and stuff to kind of like all help out the Polygon ecosystem. This is just kind of like some of the more interesting things that have been going on the Polygon side. This is more on the NFT side as well. There's like we had this Kings of Leon album that they released as an NFT using the Polygon network. Grimes sold something also as well too, and you know, people are just doing all sorts of crazy cool things around like the art and music space, even outside of gaming, right? Yeah, so I don't think we need to cover this. This is kind of just, we talked about this already. This as well too. And then on more recently in August, we had Lionel Messi had something pretty interesting. He basically he launched the Messiverse, which is on Eternity, which is kind of another one of those like NFT marketplaces, powered by Polygon though. And then he sold like one of his one of one NFTs called the King for $1 million. So, you know, I think a lot of these celebrities and artists and sports figures, you know, it makes a lot of sense, right, for collectibles. I think NFTs is like, that's kind of what people just get immediately, and having it digital is interesting too. And actually, I think this is a good point to kind of mention, like why, like some people, like one of the criticisms of NFTs you'll maybe see in the mainstream press is like, well, you know, like and maybe you even feel this way too, and I get that, right? It's like, well, why would you want a digital collectible over a physical collectible, right? Something I would much rather have, like a Pokemon card, right? Wouldn't I much rather have like something that I can hold and touch my hand? It's there, it's in my pocket, things like that. And like, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's cool, it's nice to be able to kind of see that. But I would argue, and what I think the Web3 people would argue is that, but there's a lot of benefits to having it digital, right? Having it digital means that you can basically send it to anyone around the world, right? You can easily transact that much more than you could physically. Like, how do you, like, for example, how do I go on eBay? And I mean, I can go on eBay, I can go list it, and I can mail it, but it's scary, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen, that go wrong. It could get stolen, or maybe the person doesn't receive it, right? It's just very difficult, in terms of transacting something like physical in the physical world. And then secondly, right, NFTs don't are forever. A physical item will degrade over time eventually, but then a digital item will not degrade over time. So I think that's also like a huge component of that. And then of course, lastly, I think, and this is where it's like, I think it's really exciting in this space, is that there's composability. You can interact with the digital asset in ways that you cannot interact with a physical asset in a very easy way. And an example of that is that, and this is like literally the most cutting edge of what's happening right now in NFTs and crypto, that people are literally like, collateralizing NFTs, loaning against that, right? That value. They're also creating index funds around NFTs, right? That people can trade. This is all stuff that just happens permissionlessly at the end of the day. I don't need to ask for permission of people that hold it to do this. And that's what makes, like, Ethereum and blockchain programming development really cool. So I'm just looking at the questions here. So Sean Eddy asks, how can we reach out to Polygon Fund? Yeah, I mean, you know me now, so just feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. My email is also in there, just jason@polygon.technology. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, really, it's just like, the team is really only about like 150 people or so all around the world. And if you want to reach out to the fund or the studios team, which is where the fund sits out of, that's why we're having these discussions, is because we do want to like kind of hear from, folks like yourself, like college students working on interesting projects. You can definitely just feel free to reach out to me. But yeah, in general, like if you didn't know me, then yeah, like you would have to basically find people on LinkedIn and message them or something probably to learn more. It's just all through, like, I think through people. Of course, you could also go to conferences. Like there's I will be in New York for NFT NYC, and that's going to be in basically the big NFT convention. So of course, like, going to those things, going to meetups and stuff, right? That's how you kind of get connected to the industry. Yeah, so that would be my advice. Are there tradable fractional NFT index funds? Laura asks on Polygon. Haven't figured out which ones have good liquidity. I'm pretty sure there are. I don't know off the top of my head which ones. I don't have one off the top of my head I can recommend to you, but I can definitely get back to you. There's just so much going on sometimes that it's like it's honestly hard to keep track of them. But yeah, I'm sure there is. I just don't know which one might be the right one to look at right now. But I can get back to you about that, or maybe tell Lena to, or to the blockchain Stanford blockchain team club to mention anything I see there. I'll share my email address at the end, by the way, Sean. And then the last thing, just to move on very quickly. So on the NFT side, this was actually very recent. This just came out in September, but we did something with Dolce & Gabbana, Polygon, powered by Polygon. This is an interesting use case in that what they did is they basically had a physical and digital drop. The digital part, blockchain part, powered by Polygon, but they also basically made these like custom physical like jackets and dresses. You can check it out. You can probably just Google it. It looks really cool. And basically the idea is that, that basically you could wear it physically, but also wear it digitally, in the metaverse, or in a digital representation of that asset, like in the future. So I think what they did is like they gave you also the, like literally some of like I don't know if it was like Unity that they used or something like that, but they gave you like the actual render of the 3D asset. So you could potentially, use that or carry that over to, other projects, like in a game, for example, or something like that. And of course the fact that you own it, reading your Ethereum address would basically validate that you owned it, right? Yeah. Thank you for dropping that link in the chat. Cool. Okay, so I will stop there. We're kind of basically at the workshop section. I think if you guys are already familiar with like MetaMask and how OpenSea works, then I mean, you guys can definitely like follow along. But this is basically very like beginner level, and some of you probably already know how all of this works. So just letting you guys know, just in case you're curious, like what we're going to be covering. But yeah, I'll stop here. I don't know if anyone has any other questions about what we talked about so far. Otherwise, we can kind of just jump into the workshop. Looks like we're good. Okay. Okay. I love the questions though. Love the questions. So I'll just so I'm gonna switch out to my website. I'm gonna literally do it live with you guys. But first, I'll just go over this really quick. So just setting up MetaMask. What is MetaMask? MetaMask is basically a free and secure browser extension that allows web apps to essentially interact with the Ethereum blockchain, and not just Ethereum, but any sort of EVM or Ethereum virtual machine chains such as Polygon. So basically, it's a browser extension that allows you to kind of like connect. They also have mobile apps too, but the browser extension is usually I think what most people use, especially in the US. And then basically it's kind of like it's almost like a Google auth. It's like you log in and then with your Ethereum address, and you can kind of interact and do things, and it knows you like what's in your wallet and stuff like that too. So I'm gonna stop sharing my keynote here, and I'm gonna go into sharing my my Chrome. So 1 second. Hold on. Exit out of my email. All right, you can see my screen, right? So yeah, so all you have to do is basically just Google MetaMask into the Google search engine. I actually uninstalled it from mine, just so I can literally just do it with you guys and walk you through this process. Don't worry about oh, oops, I'm an idiot and I am showing my seed keys. Sorry about that. Don't worry, there's nothing in there. It's just like a fake keys for you guys to check out. Wrong one. Sorry about that. That's a security issue. I was gonna literally walk through that, guys, with you guys, just to warn you. But yeah, so essentially, it's a bad practice to save it on the on your computer. But I just did it just to make it easier to walk it through with you guys. But usually you don't do that. But we're gonna talk about that in like a few minutes. So so essentially, what we can do here. So if you guys, am I sharing the right screen? This is, you guys are sharing my MetaMask. You guys see my MetaMask screen, right? Just, can someone verify that with me?
Yeah, so what we're seeing is just like your desktop. So we can see your Chrome browser and then like the background from your desktop.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think,
see here.
Yeah, sometimes if you don't do like the shared desktop, then like the pop-ups from MetaMask won't show up because it's kind of, I guess, interpreted different. It's just like your Chrome browser.
All right, let me try one more time.
Yeah.
Can you see this then?
Right, so I guess on your end, you're seeing your MetaMask wallet.
Yeah, just the MetaMask Google, right?
Yeah, I mean, I just see the Google, but there's no wallet in the upper right-hand corner.
Yeah, I didn't install it yet.
Okay,
Okay,
cool.
just let me know if, like, once I go through this process, if I install it or not. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'll let you know if it looks like we can't see something.
Okay, got it. Okay, so the first thing is just go to your Google, and then go to your I guess go to your just Google MetaMask. Just be very careful because, okay, now that we're going into the crypto world, there's a lot of phishing sites and a lot of like scammy things out there. So I think, like, for example, metamask.com might not actually, might actually be like a phishing site, for example. So just be very careful and just double check, right? So metamask.io is the right one. And usually the easy way to check it is I just Google things, and then usually the top result is the right one in Google. But you always want to double check and just make sure, and just be very careful about this once you're just as someone in this for about 5 or 6 years, it can be, I've almost fallen for certain things sometimes too, because I wasn't paying attention. So quickly we can just go in here. And then you can see that you can download, you just press download now, very easy. and then essentially you can just pick to install MetaMask for Chrome. They also have the iOS and Android apps too. You can do that also, but honestly, at the end of the day, like you're gonna need a browser extension to interface with it on the web, and it's kind of a pain to do it on mobile right now because the plugins don't really quite work that easily or seamlessly on mobile browsers. So so I would recommend just doing the MetaMask for Chrome. I think everyone has a PC or laptop. So just again, just be very careful, just double checking this is the right one offered by metamask.io. 10 million plus users. Okay, add to Chrome. Cool. So I think just let me know if anyone has any trouble with this, but I think it's just pretty straightforward. Should be pretty easy to do. Get started here. Okay, so new to MetaMask. So so as you guys saw very quickly, you know, if you had my if you guys quickly copied it down, you could probably actually have you could actually go into my wallet and do that, right? And that's where you would do it here on the import wallet section. But of course we don't we're assuming that we don't have it yet. You can create a new wallet. So you can actually just create a wallet and this is what we're going to do today. I agree. I'm just going to create, of course, again, I just want to stress this enough. Security is a very, very important thing in crypto, and whenever you're doing anything, like you don't want to share this stuff. This is I'm going to be making basically a fake password. Essentially, this is a new wallet that I'm not going to use. But definitely, again, like when you're doing this with other people, or maybe you're even sitting with someone right now, like you don't want to be sharing all this stuff. Like you don't want to be sharing your password, of course, or definitely not sharing your seed keys and security keys, as you'll be seeing in a second. So I'm just going to create Polygon, Jason Polygon, a password here, and create your own. So yeah, so now we're on the secure wallet part. This is kind of like what I was talking about. This is basically going to generate your secret recovery phrase, which you can essentially think of it as like your master password to get into your wallet in the future, right? Say you're for example, you're installing it on another browser, or you're installing it on your phone, and you want to connect the wallets, or on another computer. You're going to need this thing, and you definitely need to keep this safe. So I'm not going to watch this video. It's a minute long. You can watch it on your own time, or just kind of put it up here. It's pretty straightforward. We'll just walk through it, and I'll just show you how it's done. But yeah, again, like on the right side here, they basically tell you they're very, very, very explicit. This should maybe be in red and like blinking with a blinking GIF or something. But you should never ever share your secret recovery phrase. You'll see mine as I walk through the process with you. But again, like this is not a wallet I plan to use at all, and this is basically a throwaway wallet. Yeah. So when you save the secret recovery phrase, as I mentioned, you usually don't want to do it on a digitally at all, because it's just bad security practice. Ideally, you basically write it down and you store it in a safe place physically, or you can memorize it entirely. I have some friends, you know, and of course, because they have a lot of money behind these accounts, they'll memorize like the whole phrase, like maybe it's like 16 words or 24, depending on the wallet. Something you can also do is that you could also maybe write down, I know some people, there's maybe like a compromise. I'm not saying I recommend you do this, but sometimes a little bit easier for people is to maybe write down or save it digitally, like maybe like half of it, and then you memorize the other half or something. You can't memorize the whole thing. But again, I think the ideal situation and the most secure situation is to basically write it down, save it somewhere safe physically, or just fully memorize your recovery phrase, right? This is a pretty important thing to understand. I really want to emphasize this. So yeah, again, I'm gonna reveal my secret words here, just so you can see how the process looks like. But again, you should never do this and share this with anyone, period. Okay, so let's see, I'm just gonna copy this. So I have this available here. I'm gonna put this on another window so I can take a look at this in a second. But basically, this will be your secret recovery phrase. They basically keep it so that what's nice about it is that it's all real words. You know, it's easier to remember. It's not like a totally random, you know, string of letters and numbers, but it's still very secure, right? And then, yeah, of course, the order matters too. So again, they say, again, just to go over it one more time, they recommend recommend storing this in a secure password manager. You could use 1Password too. That's probably fine as well. Or you could just literally just write it down or memorize it. So I wrote it down on I just wrote it down digitally. I didn't do it physically, but you guys should probably physically write it down, and then we'll just quickly click next. And then this is a MetaMask way of just making sure you actually did it. So you don't like, you're actually able to get back into your wallet. So I'm gonna just go through this right now, and I'm assuming you guys can do this too on your own, on your side. And just FYI too, most of the wallets in general work like this to this extent. I will talk about this more at the end, but if you have a physical wallet, they also kind of have these sort of these words that you have to memorize as a phrase, as a way to secure the wallet. Client, radar, chicken. Okay. So I did it. Hopefully you were able to do it too. Just make sure to keep it safe, as I mentioned earlier, and definitely do not share it with anyone. Okay, so now we have this done. If you want to install the mobile wallet, you can just kind of use the QR code here. You can also just generate it from the plugin as well later. So let me pin this. You guys can see the pin, right? Just wondering if that shows up when I do this.
Yeah, we can see that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I like to just pin it on my browser because I use it enough where it's convenient. So recommend you guys do too, especially if you use more of go more down the blockchain and crypto route. But you can also see it just on this browser here too. You can see I have no ETH at all and no activity because it's a brand new wallet, right? Okay, so we made the MetaMask wallet. And now we can also, so you can see it defaults into Ethereum. If you go down to the Ethereum mainnet, this tab here, you can see that these are all different test networks for Ethereum. We'll be adding in, we have to add in Polygon ourselves too, which is a little annoying. Ideally, they would, MetaMask would support, multiple chains out of the gate. That's actually something that I have a friend, one of my friends actually used to work Consensus and knows the MetaMask, worked in the same office in SF with the MetaMask founders. I actually told him, hey, you should tell him to add in Polygon and some other things out of the gate. He's like, oh, I'll try, but he's just so busy, right? So, but for our purposes, we'll be adding in Polygon on our own here. So I need to find, let's see. Sorry, I didn't have it open already. Where is it? Actually, Lena, do you happen to have the or can you put it in the chat if possible, the Polygon sorry, I should have had this open up already, the Polygon walkthrough. Lena, I don't know if you have that on hand quickly. But I can drop it into the chat too. Just trying to find this here. Let's see. Trying to find the actual one. Here. I can also just do this. We can just use this here, but Polygon also has their own resources, a Notion that kind of walks through this. So sorry, I didn't have that for you guys, but you can probably just use this here. This looks like I think this is correct as well. Probably just use this here. Anyway, so we can just go through this on our own again. So all you have to do is, I'm going to take this out so I can see it while I'm doing this with you guys. But basically, it's pretty easy. You just kind of just go to custom RPC from the Ethereum mainnet. Laura asks, how do we know when it's safe to connect our wallet to custom networks? That's a good question. I mean, I don't know if there's any issue with connecting to a custom network, because you still have to prove the transaction, and of course, if it's a blockchain, then you have to spend gas, right, of some sort to do any transaction. So any transaction that may happen after you connect, it's still going to require you to approve them. But yeah, I mean, but it's true that but it is true that when you're starting to interface with different decentralized apps on the web, then there could be security issues, and you do kind of have to be a little bit careful about that, which is why I recommend using a hardware wallet, which makes it a little bit harder for someone to basically, if they install a script that basically, takes over your web browser and then just basically confirms and says yes to all your transactions. That does happen to some people. That has happened to some people. That's not necessarily related to the chain itself, but just that happened on Ethereum, for example, right? To someone that I read about in the news. But having a hardware wallet makes it a little bit harder to do that, because you have to confirm using a USB key, basically, that you approve the transactions. I think it's fine. So basically, we just go through Matic mainnet here. You can kind of just actually, I'm actually not sure if this is actually this is the exact one that I think the official Matic docs actually use a different network, but this should work too. Yeah. Again, there's a decentralized aspect to that. So so the link I sent you, explorer.matic.network is one, but Polygon Scan is another one that I think is commonly used as well too. Okay, so we set that up, and I think should be pretty easy if everyone else has. If you you guys should let me know if you guys had any trouble with that, but that's basically kind of the all you have to do to basically add the Matic network. You can always change it as well too in the future. I guess you can always just add another one in if you wanted to. I'll give like an official one later for the official documents later, where you may want to update that from the Polygon side. Anyway, so I think now we can probably just kind of jump right in and go into OpenSea. But yes, as I saw the comment here with David mentioned, yeah, the main issue is really just approving bad contracts. If there's a contract that someone's asking you to do something and you say yes, and then something bad could definitely happen at that point, because you basically gave them explicit permission to do something. So one example of ways that you could basically get scammed and where you have to be a little bit careful is, like, say for example, you go to some website, like you're wanting to trade like your token for something, right? Like, oh, I want to go trade, I want to submit my token for trading. And then they say yes, and actually what they end up doing is that they're not actually doing what you thought they were going to do. They actually just ended up, taking your money, and you just didn't realize that's what the smart contract actually was designed to do. So that's always like something that could happen, right? That's a very simple explanation, like simple example of what could happen. Although these days, I think like people are pretty vocal, and people are just watching the network very carefully. So I don't think it's like that easy to do that. As long as you kind of stick with like the known names in the space, it's usually okay. Yeah. So we can now go to OpenSea. So we kind of completed our like MetaMask setup. So now we can go to OpenSea. Again, it's OpenSea.io. I think OpenSea.com is, yeah, literally a phishing site, I believe, or something like that, or something weird. So don't go to OpenSea.com, go to OpenSea.io. Here. So then if you go to OpenSea, so now we're going to try and create our own, our first NFT, right? So you can see here, I go to OpenSea. It's already actually, because I'm logged in my MetaMask already, it actually kind of already knows that I guess it kind of sees that my wallet's here, but I didn't connect to my wallet officially quite yet, but it kind of already knows I kind of have something connected already. So you just basically connect to your wallet. That's kind of the first step. They support multiple wallets. You can definitely check out like Coinbase, Wallet Connect. These are also decent options as well. MetaMask is the one that most people use and familiar with, most supported one, I would say right now. You just kind of just go and connect it, and then yeah, you're just connecting. It's kind of like Google Auth, right? You just kind of connect. It's pretty easy. Essentially, this is kind of like your your email address, right? Or of some sorts. But there's money and transactions attached to that. So I just kind of went in. It's a new account, new wallet, so there's nothing saved here. But if you were to like save something, and I think from here you can actually go and you go to your profile here. You can actually, I think you can actually like add your email in somewhere at some point on this in OpenSea. but I'm not going to do that, where they kind of tie the email to your address and everything like that too. But if you want to stay anonymous, which a lot of people like to do in crypto, then you don't have to do that. So yeah, so basically, we're now in OpenSea. We have our wallet connected, and it's actually, and I chose OpenSea actually because the minting for NFTs is actually free. They do that for you. It's kind of like a nice UX thing that they do. I'm not actually totally sure how OpenSea does it on their back end. I believe they actually, I think when you create an NFT, I don't think it's actually NFT until you lock it in or until someone buys it from you. But I'm not totally sure exactly how the architecture works for them. But for some websites, I think like other ones, they actually do, there's a minting cost to it, and they charge you, you have to pay for that minting cost. And that, of course, means that it was actually an NFT written to the blockchain, Ethereum blockchain. So we can just go kind of create one to start. And then you have to do the signature request. Basically, you can kind of read it. Usually you do want to read these pop-ups whenever you're interacting with any sort of DApp. But basically, this basically means that we're accepting the OpenSea terms of service. Okay, cool. So we can create a new item. I'm actually going to create a collection first, but you can actually create an update, like create an item one of one, but I'm going to create a collection because I think you can kind of walk through that. It's a little bit more interesting, I think, walk through that. So I'm going to create a collection here. I have some saved stuff here. Let's see. Gradient sample. So I have some saved PNGs just to kind of go through this process. For you guys, like if you don't have anything, I don't think everyone's an artist here, but you can definitely just pick any random image if you want to just take a look at that. It's not a big deal. You don't really have to. We're just in the creation phase, right? So it's not really like anyone necessarily will be like buying this or anything like that. But I created something called Gradients by Jason. It's the new hot NFT project that'll be coming soon to a OpenSea marketplace near you. So this is my logo image, and I mean it's pretty simple, to be honest with you. Like you can just kind of go through and figure out yourself. But you upload like a feature image, banner image. This is just more. This is not so much like the Web3 stuff. It's just more about like just if you're creating an NFT, how do you want to market it on OpenSea, right? So this you do have to name something for that. Gradients. I'll just call it like Gradients by Jason 3 because I might have used that name before. And then you can of course add your add custom URLs if you want to. I guess maybe I just Gradients 3, provide a description, category, all your good stuff here. What is interesting though is that this is kind of the royalties I was talking to you about. This is a kind of an interesting thing. So the royalties is something that can be written to the smart contract, but of course, if you think about it, it kind of also does depend a little bit on whether the marketplace that's selling your item and listing your item will also honor that royalty. But I think for the most part, pretty much every single NFT marketplace honors a royalty because at the end of the day, that's creator friendly and people want to support the creators. So I will just put like 5%. But because I put a royalty that I wanted to ask, you have to put in a payout address. So my payout address will be the address that I just made. And then that's the wallet address I have. Again, I'm on the Matic network now, but if you switch back and forth, my Ethereum address is the same thing as my Matic address. So you don't have to worry about that. And then I think just in the future, just because I know when I first started out, it was like, oh my God, this like string of letters and numbers is really intimidating, right? Is this the right thing? I like quadruple check like whenever I was putting my wallet. Now I just copy and paste and I don't really think about it too much. But you can check by knowing it's a Ethereum address by the 0x. So every Ethereum address and every Polygon address starts with 0x. As an FYI. I see a question here from Kate. Does gallery organization improve conversion rate? Also, what are the coolest galleries on the platform? Good questions. I'll answer the first one, and the second one we can kind of look at some stuff after we go through the workshop because I think we'll have a little bit of time. But yeah, so the gallery organization, it's not so much about like improving conversion rate necessarily, but typically I wanted to walk through it because is because that's kind of how all the major ones are doing it right now. They're all collections of some sort. I mean, at the end of the day, I think unless you're an established artist, no one's really going to care for your one-of-one art piece at the end of the day. I mean, it's just like anything. It's like at the end of the day, just because you put something as an NFT doesn't mean you're going to sell it, right? But a collection is more interesting. You're getting more people in it. There's a community aspect. There's more to sell, more people to interact with. And that's basically kind of how the big NFT projects now are being built, other than like Beeple or like, you know, like these very like one-off artists. That's where most of the entrepreneurs are basically are creating collections essentially. And then we'll walk through some other ones maybe if we have some time. So you can see here, you can select which blockchain you use. Again, as we mentioned, Polygon is natively supported, but Ethereum is good too. So again, there's always trade-offs, right? So Ethereum is interesting because Ethereum is kind of where like the major NFT activity and purchasing and selling and transferring is happening. It's the main chain at the end of the day. But again, you know, more and more entrepreneurs and collections are starting to mint on Polygon as well, just because it's just way cheaper and way faster and easier to do. You can choose your different tokens that you want to purchase. It's not really like a big deal, but you can kind of select them. I don't know why the image does not show up. Maybe it's just something on OpenSea's back end, but yeah, we can just choose all of them. I don't really care. You can actually choose all of them. It doesn't really matter because you'll get all of them inside your wallet anyway. Your Polygon or Ethereum wallet will support all of these tokens because it's basically kind of mirrored, basically, right? And display theme, this is just kind of like very, you know, it doesn't really matter. You can just choose whatever you want. Yeah, and then we just press create. And it created. I think depending on when you do it, sometimes when there's a backlog, it will take some time to create or there'll be an error, but just try a few more times if you get an error. Because that happened to me, I think, like the last time actually I did a talk, I had an error at first. So yeah. So hopefully you guys are able to just create one. You can always go and edit it later, so don't worry about that. So just make sure you kind of just follow along while you can. Now we can just go through and just add an item. It's pretty much the same process as adding the collection, but now you're literally adding in the individual item. So I made an ocean sample. This is my gradient, you know, it's part of my gradient collection. So like ocean, blue. You can actually, because a lot of these projects are not entirely tied to OpenSea, right? Like they also have their own websites with their own interesting things going on with their website. Then you can also add a link. I will not do that here, so I don't have one. You can add a description. And I do want to point this out. This is kind of interesting about OpenSea and just kind of generally how people are thinking about NFTs in general and how they can be useful for the future. You can basically assign essentially certain properties to it. This is kind of like the metadata aspect I was kind of talking to you about, like for example, Zrun. Actually, let me just open this up here. And I can just show you some examples here. Let's look at Bored Apes actually. Interesting. Interesting. I'm wondering why they're where the official one is. Again, so this is a good example. Like, so I don't know if you saw that, but like when you search here, Bored Apes, there are all sorts of like, I don't know what these things are. So you got to be careful, right? Like again, there was that question earlier about the spam. There's a lot of spam on OpenSea, to be totally honest with you. And it's not just about Polygon or Ethereum. It's just a lot of people. It's so you can see how easy it is to make things. So there's a lot of spam. So this is a little scary, right? I mean, even Polygon has their own Bored Apes one, which is kind of funny. But again, it's tricky, right? You have to be very careful about I think purchasing the right one. OpenSea at least has a verified collection badge. This is a very manual process from their side. It's not like they made this like super easy to do from their side to make sure it's like the original creator, but you have to be very careful, right? So this one, I think looks like the right one because it has the blue badge. So let's just go look in here and just kind of see what's listed in terms of properties. I just want to show you kind of like how other projects, you know, thinking about this. So basically, I think the way Bored Apes has it is that they have basically essentially different kinds of traits across background, clothes, eyes, fur, hat, etc. So you can kind of see, you know, yellow background, laser eyes, a bit, you know, referring to a Bitcoin meme. And these are kind of the traits that, these guys decide to choose. But if you're like making a gaming, I'll go back to our creation process here. We can add in our properties, whatever we want. This is pretty arbitrary at the end of the day. But I think some of the other, like some of the NFTs are more gaming specific, like they add in attributes. You can add in attributes of speed or power, whatever, right? And you can list that out on OpenSea and trade them. And the idea being that when you go to their website or to their mobile app, one day later on, you can use NFTs that have different traits that are, that are guaranteed to have these traits and have value of beyond just the artwork itself, right? And there's other stats here too. So I'm not going to add it in, but I could just say maybe like color, right? So do that. And yeah, and then and I kind of just quickly go through. You can add those all in. This unlockable content is kind of, I think this is a relatively newer thing that they started adding in, where basically what some of the newer NFT drops are doing now is that they don't reveal them all ahead of time, because it kind of ruins like the surprise factor of like the whole like gambling loot box mechanic of it, right? So they will lock it behind it's locked content, and then if you're the owner though, then you can actually open it and see for yourself what it is. So it's like more of a surprise, more fun, I guess. We're going to keep it on the Polygon chain, but of course you can choose between Polygon or Ethereum depending on what you want to do. And yeah, and then that's it. And I just have to just create it, and then it will be created. After creation of this, you can actually still edit this, which I'll show you in a second. So that's why I don't think it's actually an NFT quite yet on the platform, because you can still edit this here. But I think once there is something, if you go back to edit, you go at the very end, you can say freezing metadata. I think at this step, I think is when it actually does become an NFT, or when someone buys, you put it up for auction, someone buys and trades it, and then they buy it. I think that's actually at the exact point when it becomes an NFT on the OpenSea platform, right? So basically, why would OpenSea do that? They make it so that it's easier, more user friendly, right? So they say it's an NFT, but it's not actually an NFT until I think something like a transaction happens. I think that's how it works, at least with the OpenSea side. But for every marketplace, it's different. Some of them will actually just straight outright mint it for you, but that will cost you money too, right? To do that. Something I also want to mention too, really quick, because I know this is just before I forget, is that when you are in your crypto journey, right, after you make your NFTs and stuff, you're gonna maybe want to insert money into your wallet. So like say you go on Coinbase or something like that, this is your address, and you connect your bank account. You can buy some Matic or Ethereum, and you can transfer it to Ethereum or Matic, right? Polygon, and basically you have your address. This is basically the address you would use to send money from like an exchange to kind of get started. Say like, for example, you want to go buy this Bored Ape. You got a spare 120K lying around, no big deal. You can just buy this. You could, like, I could do that if I had money in if I had that much in my account right now. I could actually do that right now, for example. So if you're thinking about doing that sort of stuff, I just wanted to really quickly mention that not all exchanges are the same. Robinhood for example, is a very popular app for buying equities and also buying crypto. But I would just have to say that Robinhood, just be careful. Robinhood does not allow you to take money out of or crypto out of your account. So I would not recommend Robinhood if you want to like kind of start to go down in terms of buying NFTs and starting to do a lot more in this space. Coinbase is the way to go, I would say. There are other exchanges too. BlockFi is a decent one as well. And then there's other ones as well, like KuCoin. Like the list goes on and on. But I would say Coinbase, it's the biggest one. It's public for a reason. I personally feel safest with my stuff in Coinbase for my fiat purchases. So I would recommend Coinbase. But definitely don't use Robinhood though, because you literally just can't even take your money out of there at the end of the day. So it's not really useful for that if you want to actually interact with these dApps. It's just more for like an investment on their platform. But yeah, so I'll kind of stop there. I mean, we pretty much went through the whole process. And we made our first. Hopefully, you guys were able to all make your first NFT. I think you were kind of asking maybe if do we have time, by the way? I just wanted to double check here.
Yeah, I mean, I could stick around, and if other people have questions, they can stick around.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
We can keep
So yeah,
recording if you want to keep going.
yeah, we can keep going. Let me actually just okay, well, let me answer Kate's question first. What are some cool ones I've been seeing? We can just search on OpenSea, right? And it just kind of depends, right? It depends on every single person. So Mechaverse is like this one that's a super hyped one that just came out literally like a couple of days ago. I couldn't get into the mint. But this is like, I think the artists are well known in crypto. There's this whole like backstory. People love the lore. I think if you're thinking about the marketing aspect, people love the lore. So definitely add some lore and stuff to it. But basically it's kind of these 3D generated robots, like almost like what's the movie almost like Transformers like. I'm not really sure why people liked it so much, but I mean, look, the art's pretty cool. It's 3D, so it's a little bit different than like a 2D art project, right? Uh, created by computers, basically computer generated. But this was really hype. People really like got into it, and this is like at the top of the trading activity right now. This is one of the more cooler recent ones that just came out. There's some other ones that are kind of interesting and notable are, let me just think about this. We can actually look at another one. This is I like this. This is a pretty cool exchange. I like this one because they actually have some really cool artists that will launch on here. So again, we can connect our wallets. It's our kind of our email address basically. Do this now really quick, but I like Foundation because they have some really cool like artists that will post their stuff here. It's kind of known for the oh, is it because I'm not connected to Matic? Yeah, sorry, it took a while because it was they don't support Matic. This site is Ethereum. Let me try again. Why is this not working? Oh, I see here. Okay. So yeah, I mean, it just kind of depends, right, on what you may have a favorite artist that you like, but like for example, I really like this artist. I'm a gamer. He's a he does a lot of the character art for Riot Games as well. So I think this stuff is pretty cool. There's like Seer Light is another like interesting one. Is he on here? Seer Light, yeah. I think this is some pretty cool stuff that they do. This is like animated, right? He does a lot of like kind of like Japanese animes inspired sort of art. But this stuff, I mean, this stuff goes for a lot of money. Like people literally, these are like actual art collectors will like buy this stuff, right? Or different foundations or DAOs, what they call it, decentralized autonomous organizations, where they will people will basically pull their money and collect and basically kind of have like their own art galleries that they own together. So Seerlight is a pretty popular one. Zeronis, the one I showed you earlier, is also a popular one. I wonder if Beeple is on here. Is Beeple on here? No, is this a fake one? I don't know. I don't know where Beeple sells his stuff. He's like the one that set the record for like the most expensive NFT ever sold, like at like I forget what it was. 90 million. I don't know, maybe that's actually lower than that. Maybe it was actually higher than that, but it was a lot of money basically. Do you have a mecha, Laura? Is that what you're saying? You got into that?
I unfortunately bought it on secondary, but yes.
Oh, what price did you get in at?
I'll DM you, Jason.
It's so funny. Yeah, it's it was oh, well, I'm glad you're into it, right? That means you're definitely into the space. Sorry, I'm just going through the questions here. How do you effectively market an NFT collection? Oh, that is the question that everyone's always asking, right? I mean, I come from a growth background, so I guess I have to answer this question, but but it's just a combination of different things, right? It's of course, if you have an artist that has a lot of clout already, that's huge. I think that the current strategies that most people employ are like, influencer or KOL led, where like, you have some crypto influencer like shilling it, right? That's always one thing. That's one strategy. I think there's also ways that are more Web3 native that you can go down, such as like kind of going down, like if you have connections, right, to the right people, and they're collectors, and you do something innovative or interesting, then you can always talk to kind of like these gaming, like these guilds, like these DAOs I was telling you about, that basically invest in these art assets, and then they will, like, if they find it interesting and cool, then they may buy some and then tell their friends, other art collectors. I think it's really cool, and then that's kind of how you can get the marketing started there, like the word of mouth. I think a lot of these crypto people on Twitter is kind of where Twitter and Discord is where all the NFT activity is from a social platform, especially in the West. So, you can just basically kind of go to those Discords, talk to people, get to know them. I mean, it's very community driven. I would say crypto is very, very community driven right now. So I think if it's too obvious that you're shilling something, people don't like that, right? So I think the key is to basically just be a contributor to the community, right, of whatever community that you choose. And then if you have another NFT project that's coming out, if they like you and you're into it, then you can always leverage those communities, right, to kind of go into your project as well too. Of course, if there's any interesting things around like the gaming side or the or like the decentralized finance side or whatever, maybe some other totally crazy thing that I've never thought about before, then of course that will attract attention. People will like that. Yeah, but marketing, it's the same thing. Marketing in NFTs is the same thing as marketing and anything else. It's always a challenge to get to be heard, and there's always gonna be multiple strategies to do that. Cool. Do you think NFT? Yeah, 69 million was for the Beeple one. Thank you for that. There's a question here on, do you think NFT fatigue is coming soon? What signs are you seeing of whether we'll see another large influx of NFT buyers? Good question. This is also a question that a lot of our potential partners are asking us too. I think I kind of alluded to this in the very beginning, but yeah, some companies are like, oh well, it kind of feels like we're at the top of the market right now. Like we kind of want to wait to we want to get in. We like this, it's interesting, but we think it's kind of like buying in at the top of the bubble, right? And maybe that's true. At the end of the day, I'm not going to say I know or anyone knows like when or not it will like kind of pop. But from what I see is that there's a lot of people interested still. And then with the Coinbase news and everything, I think that's going to be another driver. I think actually with the Coinbase news coming out, that probably means that we probably at least have another like 3 to 6 months, I would say. That's my guess. But that would be another like spike in terms of interest in NFT and new buyers coming into the space. So maybe you want to hold on to that megaverse, for those new buyers to come in, and we can flip it to them, Laura, later on. But yeah, it's hard to say though, right? I think at the end of the day, like what will drive the my personal opinion is that I think gaming is going to be a major factor in terms of driving the utility and value of these NFTs. I don't think like art. I think art will definitely have its place, especially the higher quality ones. But at the end of the day, it's funny because NFTs are unique, but of course anyone can make a new NFT. So are NFTs as a category, are they super unique? Of course not, right? There can be unlimited amounts of NFTs out there. So at the end of the day, it's still very early. So it's kind of almost like a land grab while people are still experimenting what's going on, which is what makes it so exciting. But at the same time, in the over the next 3 to 6 years, of 3 to 10 years, yeah, like the value will eventually accrue to like the best quality projects, the best quality art, or has the most utility, like than gaming with the entertainment utility. Yeah, and of course some of the ones like Bored Apes where there's like Steph Curry and all these celebrities in there, those will retain value because they kind of act more like a membership club, right? So that's also that too. By the way, my AirPods are dying, so if you stop hearing me, then you'll know why, and I can always change to something else. FYI. So yeah, I guess I'll stop sharing my screen. I think the last thing I'll just mention to kind of wrap things up here is, let me just share my screen one last time. And you can see my email here as well too. So my email is for those who need it. But basically the wrap up here is that I think NFTs are definitely the future. I'm obviously super bullish. That's why I'm in the space and why I'm helping out Polygon on this side as well too. I would definitely just check out like the Twitter and Discords of the different projects. That's the way to kind of get in and kind of see how the culture is, the community is. There's just a lot of really interesting innovation on the frontier. I kind of mentioned that already throughout the course of this talk, but like composability, which is basically being able to like have different projects kind of work together and interact in different ways. That's going to be really interesting. You know, collateralization, the finance aspect of NFTs and what that value might, you know, how you can actually accrue more value from that. That's also interesting. Decentralized autonomous organizations, there's a lot of activity going here right now. New stuff going on this front. As investment vehicles are also just like vehicles and like almost like esports teams on the gaming side to kind of act like that too. Really interesting stuff. And then then finally, I think like there's some cool sites that I think are pretty interesting. If you want to check out more about awesome like Polygon stuff, you can check out on Awesome Polygon. Oh, I think my AirPods died. Sorry. One second. Sorry. Sorry, my voice. Let's see here. Sorry, my AirPods died.
Can you hear me? Sorry about
Yeah,
that.
I mean, we
Yeah.
can hear you. You can hear us.
Yeah, I can. Sorry about that. I thought I might be able to make it to the very end. I was almost done, but let me just wrap up everything. Just one more minute. Sorry about that, guys. But yeah, just so yeah, if you want to check out more of the ecosystem Polygon, you can check out awesomepolygon.com. Zapper.fi is really cool. It's like more of like a social sort of thing. I use this with my friends. I think like, you know, when you're investing in NFTs or investing in different projects, whether it's outside of NFTs as well too, you know, this is a really good site for if you want to be anonymous, don't use it, but you know, you can share it with some friends. You can basically, it's an easy way to track other people's activity. Be like, oh, like what NFT did you buy? Oh, you can check out my wallet, right? It's like a way to kind of share your wallet and share your different stuff that you're doing. So I actually kind of like this a lot from like a social perspective. And I do this with like, I share my address with my friends so we can kind of see what we're up to. And then I think very lastly, you know, definitely buy a hardware wallet. As you start to get more into the space, I would say MetaMask is secure, but you never know what might happen outside of MetaMask. Sometimes people will run like malicious scripts where you know, where they actually, you know, basically do transactions on your MetaMask without you knowing on your behalf, and it happens like instantly, right? So I mean, at the end of the day, if you're staying within OpenSea, you're staying into more of these normal, like more established NFT and crypto dApps, it's not going to be an issue. But as you start to go deep down the rabbit hole, then you may accidentally run into some, you know, bad malicious actors. And I think having a hardware wallet goes a long way into making sure that, you know, it's a little bit harder for them to execute transactions without you knowing, because it literally will require you to confirm things on a USB key. Essentially, that's basically your physical wallet. So I like using Trezor or Ledger. You can just look that up on Amazon. You can buy them. It's not too expensive. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks everyone, and thanks for all the great questions. I had a really good time. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming, Jason. I'm gonna end the recording now.
Mm-hmm.